Aston Villa 3, Newcastle United 0, and my days was at a dominating performance from Aston Villa. They are really charging in this Premier League fight for Europe. They've come out of nowhere. I mean, I know a couple months ago, I was one of many people saying that I thought Aston Villa were just one of the few teams floating in this Premier League. A lot of teams are fighting for something, whether it's trying to win the league, qualify for Europe, or avoid relegation. Aston Villa were just floating. But under Unai Emery, boy, have they made a push. Scored in every single game he's managed them in the Premier League, and they are looking really, really strong. They've got a good balance them defensively and going forward, and this is a good Newcastle United side. This is a Newcastle United side that's fresh off beating Brentford away from home, which is a tough, tough match. Fresh off winning even against West Ham in midweek, a massive win. And again on the weekend against Manchester United. They're 3 wins on the bounce. And coming to Aston Villa here, I thought it's going to be 2 evenly matched sides. But it didn't really look that way. Really put them to the sword, Aston Villa. And they were really strong. And they're making this push for Europe. Can they make Champions League? That's what I've titled this video. Because I spoke about how a lot of these teams around there, Manchester United, Newcastle, Liverpool, Tottenham, Brighton, they look good. They're good teams, don't get me wrong. But none of them have been really consistent. The one thing Aston Villa have under Unai Emery is consistency. They're looking good and they're looking like they're picking up results in a consistent fashion. No one wants to go to Villa Park. It's a tough place to go. It's a fortress by all accounts. And there's only about 8 or so games left of the Premier League season. But if Aston Villa keep pushing, who knows, man? Who knows this season? Because anything can happen. This is a massive 6-pointer against a team that's currently in the Champions League spots. To win this football match is massive for Aston Villa. And in the fashion they do so as well, completely putting Newcastle to the sword here. 3-0 against Newcastle, who has the best defensive record in the Premier League. Didn't look that way whatsoever because it was 3, but could have been 4 or 5-0. Honestly, it was rampant from Aston Villa, and I got to give them all the credit they deserve. Been really, really good under Unai Emery, and this typified that. I think some of the football in there is so good, man. Going defensively to attacking wise as well. They're not exactly the best passing team in the league. I'm not saying that by any stretch of the imagination, but they do pass the ball very efficiently. They've got good players in the team, like Emi Buendia, like Jacob Ramsey, like Douglas Luiz, who know how to manipulate the football, man. They know how to get the ball between the lines from defence to attack quickly, and it works for them. And Ollie Watkins, under Unai Emery, has become a proper bagsman. I remember when Unai Emery was at Arsenal, he actually wanted to sign Ollie Watkins. I believe it was from Brentford at the time, before he then went to Aston Villa. Well, he's got his wish now, because managing Aston Villa, he gets to manage Ollie Watkins, who's been a dream striker for Unai Emery. Been absolutely brilliant up there, and banging in the goals as well. Being a perfect type of striker for him. A target man when he needs to be to relieve some pressure, but also running in behind, curving his runs, and really being clinical in front of goal. Really, really good for Aston Villa, Ollie Watkins has been, and Unai Emery will be absolutely loving what his side is doing. Welcome into the chat, Luca. How are you? I'm doing fine, my friend. I'm doing really fine. Of course, I'm looking forward to the match later today when Man City plays Leicester City at 5:30 p.m. I cannot wait for it. What a massive game for the title running. And I'm hoping for my club Arsenal that Leicester pick up something from that match, but I heavily doubt so. But regardless, here we're talking about Aston Villa and Newcastle. I think I should move on to Newcastle now a little bit, because with Newcastle, right, this result does not define what's been a brilliant season for them and Eddie Howe. A brilliant season. Going from last season when, before the takeover happened, they were flirting with relegation, and to now see how much they've kicked on. I think even the most optimistic of Newcastle fans wouldn't have even fathomed the fact that they could be in Champions League football next season, kicking about with the likes of the Real Madrids, the Bayern Munichs, etc. But it's been such a good season for them. Such a good season. Players have really come to the fore. We've seen players like Isak take his game to a brand new level at Newcastle United. A level I never really thought he'd be ever able to achieve. I thought he'd be a really good striker, but I didn't think he'd reach the levels that he's reached this season at times for Newcastle. Been so good. Bruno Guimaraes, one of the signings of the season last year in January. Really wanted Arsenal to sign him. Didn't end up happening. He's created a real home at Newcastle. Alike Botman and Shaw, really good partnership in defence. Kieran Trippier, we know how good of a signing he's been. A bit of leadership in there. And he knows the Premier League like the back of his hand. So really good overall for Newcastle this season. I still do believe they'll make Champions League despite this result. This might hurt them a bit though, because I can't remember the last time Newcastle got beat this bad. They've lost games, don't get me wrong, but even when they lost to Man City 2-0, I actually thought Newcastle were alright in that game. They just couldn't really finish their dinner and they got hit on the counter-attack. Today's the first game where I've watched Newcastle actually get obliterated. Aston Villa put them to the sword. Took them to the cleaners. It was no contest. Aston Villa were by far the better team. That's what I think will hurt Newcastle United, because this season, despite the fact that they've lost some games, not a lot, but they've lost some games and drawn a lot of matches, rarely have I seen Newcastle really been dominated in the fashion they've been dominated today. So I don't know if that'll hinder their confidence a little bit. There's a strong end to the season now, and this is the run-in. So a lot of the teams, this is where they need to pick up points. I've already spoken about how Aston Villa have got the momentum now. Do I think they'll make Champions League? Not necessarily, because they've got too much of a gap still to make up. But the way they're playing, if they keep picking up wins, who knows, man? Because they're one of the most informed teams in the Premier League right now. And the worst thing Newcastle need is to have this loss as a relapse and then have a bit of a hangover and lose the following matches or drop points. Because I always say everyone's going to lose in football. You're not the 2003-2004 Arsenal team. You're not the Invincibles. Losses are going to happen. It's inevitable. It's how you bounce back from losses. You can't lose a game and then lose your game after or draw the game after. Because then that dropped 3 points becomes dropping 5 points, 6 points potentially. You have to bounce back and stop the bleeding. So that's what I'm going to look for with Newcastle here, because they've lost this game. They've lost it in devastating fashion. They never really seem to be in the match, even from minute 1 when Ollie Watkins ran through and probably should have scored after about 40 seconds. But it's one of those games. You've lost it. How do you bounce back now as Newcastle? I'm not sure who their match is, who their next match is. I'm actually going to search up Newcastle fixtures because I want to see. I mean, for them, they're hoping it's going to be a friendly bounce back match. Their next match is Tottenham Hotspur at home. Well, at least they're back at St James's Park for that return match. But Tottenham Hotspur, that's going to be a big game, especially in terms of the top 4 race. They're going to need to find a bounce back there at home. Newcastle fixtures, they've still got some tough games coming up, man. By all means, they've still got to play Arsenal, for example. Still got to play Chelsea. Still got to play Tottenham. It's not easy by any stretch of imagination for Newcastle. But you got to look at it and say, overall, they're putting themselves in a really good spot to make Champions League. A really good spot. They're playing beautiful football under Eddie Howe. This wasn't their game. For one reason or another, Aston Villa came out to play football. They played really, really well. They were there dominating from minute 1 to 90. Really aggressive, really intense. Getting the ball up the pitch quickly. And they knew the game plan to win that football match. Utilising Ollie Watkins perfectly as a target man and to spin in behind the defenders. And it worked a dream for them. For Newcastle, look, it's one of those things. You got to just put it down as one of those losses. Every team suffers it during the season. That one loss where you're just not good. Like, if that game was played 100 times, Aston Villa would have won it 99 times because they were just dominant all over the park. And they deserve to lose that game, Newcastle, and potentially more than 3-0 to be completely honest. But it's one of those things. It's how they bounce back now. Tottenham next week. It'll be a massive game, a crunch game with respect to making the Champions League football next season. They got to turn up and they got to win that game. They've been really good at St James's Park this season. And I think Newcastle will go into that game really with confidence because they've dismantled teams at St James's Park. Manchester United, they put them to the sword. Won that game 2-0 and it could have been more. Chelsea as well, equally won that game really well against Chelsea as well. Newcastle look good at St James's Park and I'd be interested to see how they attack that match. Do they go into that game on the front foot like they did against Manchester United? Or do they go into that game against Tottenham next week, sitting back and taking pressure? Because Tottenham and Newcastle are two teams that are counter-attacking sides. They perform best on the counter-attack. So I'd be really interested to see what team actually goes on the front foot. I do assume, given they're at home, Newcastle will be on the front foot against Tottenham. But does that feed into Tottenham's hands? Because we know Stellini, he's still got that Conte blood in him that will play that counter-attacking football, get the ball quickly up to Son, up to Kane, and try and exploit Newcastle on the break. It'll be a really fascinating match. I cannot wait for it next week. I think it'll be a really good match to watch. But Aston Villa, back to them. Does anyone think they're going to make top 4? That's my real question. Does anyone think Aston Villa are going to make top 4? Because in terms of making Europe, they're in really good hands. They're in a really good position. They're in the best form out of any team. The squad's clicking. A lot of players on confidence. Aston Villa are on a really good chance of making Europa League. I'd honestly put them in probably making Europa League this season. If I have to choose right now and make my table, Aston Villa would finish 5th or 6th to make Europa League. My question is, can they make Champions League though? Because that's a whole different kettle of fish. Because the way I look at the table right now, Arsenal, Man City are confirmed making Champions League at least. Confirmed. We've then got Manchester United and Newcastle, who a lot of people are assuming are going to make Champions League given their position right now. And out of all the inconsistent teams, they're the most consistent. But Aston Villa right now are the most in-form side in the Premier League alongside Arsenal and Man City. They are in form, Aston Villa. They are banging form. Ollie Watkins is banging in goals. The defence is solid. Emi Martinez is keeping out the shots. Yet Jacob Ramsey, Douglas Luiz and Emi Buendia is looking like a really strong midfield three. Can Aston Villa make Champions League? Because I've not put it past them. I definitely not by any stretch of imagination put it past Aston Villa making Champions League right now. Because they've got the form. And they're beating Newcastle. That's a 6-pointer. A team that's currently in there. Because the way I look at it right now, I do believe Manchester United will still make the top 4. Despite the fact they've got some injuries. You don't know though. Like I said, Rashford out injured. We saw Lisandro Martinez is now out for the season as well. Rafael Varane, will he be back in time, etc. Injuries can cost you. And we know Manchester United have not got the deepest squad in the world. But they have got really important players like Lisandro Martinez and Rashford. With those two injured, who knows, man? Manchester United really could make a fool off. And if that's the case, you got to be ready to pounce. And one thing Aston Villa have been doing, and fair play to them for this as well, because I said at the start of the stream, at the start of the season, not at the start of the season, around just after World Cup time, out of all the teams playing for something, I was applauding and I was saying how amazing the Premier League is, how there's such a fight for the title, a fight for Champions League, fight for Europe, a fight to avoid relegation. It's so important. Every team's playing for something. But I went out and said, one of the only teams not really fighting for anything is Aston Villa. They're just floating in between mid-table. But fair play to them. Under Unai Emery, they've really taken that step up and have really made themselves have at least some kind of chance to make European football, and now they put themselves in the running. So it just goes to show, even if you're a mid-table side, you string together a few results in a row and you can shoot up that Premier League table. That's exactly what Aston Villa are doing. Scoring under every game Unai Emery has managed them in the Premier League is some stat and a half, man, and they're doing really, really well. And no one would put it past them to make Champions League. No, I wouldn't put it past them whatsoever. And if they do, that's going to be one hell of a recovery. And big up Unai Emery for that as well, because I'm going to make this quick statement on Unai Emery, because when he was at Arsenal, my club, of course, it was a kind of a big step for him. And he had a really good start to life at Arsenal. Did really well and got us to 5th. So close to making Champions League and the Europa League final in the same season, which many would say is a really good season for Unai Emery. But then things kind of turned on him. The ship turned around. It started to sink like the Titanic. Players annoyed. The media mocking him with the good evening thing. And it kind of went a bit sour. And at the end of the day, he left Arsenal. And it left with a bitter taste in your mouth. But one thing he did do, and it's similar to what Brendan Rodgers did going to Scotland, he went back to his roots. He went back to Spain to manage Villarreal and got his confidence back again. He took a step down from Arsenal and he went to a team like Villarreal, who are not as big as Arsenal, but he got his confidence back. Started to play his football again, started to get his mojo back, took Villarreal to the Champions League semi-final, which is an amazing feat, by the way. And now the Aston Villa job came about. Aston Villa struggling under Steven Gerrard, but such a massive football club, amazing club, Aston Villa, such rich heritage. And he thought, I'm going to have another go in the Premier League. And boy, has he really took advantage of it. Boy, has Unai Emery really taken advantage coming back to the Premier League. Taking his second opportunity like a dog to water, man. He's been really, really excited for it. And he's really got the Aston Villa team clicking. Played really well. Got Ollie Watkins, his star striker, clicking. And the team's really galvanising behind this Aston Villa push to make Champions League football. Will they make it? I'm not too sure. But they give themselves every opportunity to do so. Every opportunity to do so, because they're really fighting. They're not hearing any of the media say Aston Villa are not going to make Champions League. Aston Villa have got too much of a gap to make Champions League. They're not hearing that. They're picking up the results. And as long as they keep winning, anything can happen, man. Anything can happen. Because I've said how inconsistent a lot of teams have been in the Premier League, because bar Arsenal, a lot of the other teams have actually underperformed this season. Like Man City, I know Man City are still second and potentially still favourites to win the Premier League. But I think we can all agree Man City have not reached the heights that we've seen them in the previous seasons when they've been competing with Liverpool. In fact, they've been a little bit underneath that. Manchester United have been good this season, but that's not the Manchester United of the old. The Manchester United under Sir Alex Ferguson that will be winning titles year in, year out. Newcastle United performed really well. Let's get that in there. But even Newcastle's best performances are not going to fight for the title. Let's be completely honest about it. Then you've got Tottenham who have fallen off, Liverpool who have fallen off, Chelsea who have fallen off, Brighton look good, but fair enough, even their best form ain't going to win them the league either. So it's a real good chance for Aston Villa in this season. Genuinely, if they keep picking up results like this and they keep making Villa Park a fortress, they're going to keep fighting. And they've got every hope and every chance in the world to make this Champions League spot next season. And I have to say, fair play to them. Fair play to them, because at the start of the season, they were a bit raggedy. They were calls to get Steven Gerrard out the door, and they made a decision. It was a tough decision, especially given what Steven Gerrard has done at Rangers. He looked really good. But they made the right call, getting rid of him and bringing in a top manager in Unai Emery. And look how their fortunes have turned. Look how their fortunes have turned under Unai Emery. They're becoming a team that every team fears. Every team fears. No one wants to go Villa Park. Tell me one Premier League team that wants to go Villa Park. You don't. Even when Arsenal went to Villa Park, it took a last-second Emi Martinez own goal from a Jorginho strike to get the 3 points. It's a tough place to go. Man City have drawn there. It's a tough place to go. No team wants to go to Villa Park. So for Aston Villa, that's one of the biggest things, man. I always say, a Premier League team, your home form is your most important thing. You got to make your home place a fortress. That is the foundations for any type of consistency in this Premier League. Your home form. You have to be a ground no one wants to go. If you're a ground that people go, yeah, I'm going Villa Park on the weekend, easy 3 points, that's a bad sign. That's a very bad sign. And Unai Emery has created a fortress at Villa Park right now. Newcastle, like I said, this season, they've lost matches, I agree. They haven't lost a lot. And the games they have lost, they've never been obliterated in the fashion they were obliterated today. This was one-way traffic. This was men against boys out here today. And Aston Villa took them to the swords, took them to the cleaners, man. And like I said, that's a credit to Aston Villa. They've really turned this into a fortress. That is equally why I believe teams like Everton will stay up in the Premier League. Because Goodison Park, although they don't get the results and don't have the quality that Aston Villa have, Goodison Park is a little bit of a fortress. It's got siege mentality, a tight pitch, under the lights, crowd on their back. It's got that type of mentality to it. I say teams like that are the teams that got the best chance of staying and doing well in the Premier League. Your home form is your foundation. The home form is your baseline. And Aston Villa have got a brilliant home form. And under Unai Emery, they're really cooking. And they're looking like they can make the Champions League spots. Trust me. There's only also 8 or 9 games left. But you piece together wins in a row. Look, 8 games left. That means you've still got the potential to get 24 points. You still got the potential to pick up 24 points. And that's a lot of points to play for. No one can tell me that isn't. Will Aston Villa make Champions League? I'd be interested to hear what you lot say, so let me know in the live chat. Do you think Aston Villa will make the Champions League? But regardless whether they do, whether they don't, you do have to say it's been a brilliant turnaround from Unai Emery. And the trajectory is on the up for Aston Villa. It is on the up. They're looking like they're going to get better next season. They've got a bit of stability with the manager, and it can breed results. Because I always say, to get consistency, it starts from the top. If you want consistency in results, you got to have a consistent manager. Then you got to have a consistent team selection, consistent formation, tactics. Everything's got to be consistent to get results. If you're a club that sacks your managers after 4 or 5 months, how are you going to get any consistency? Because the manager's in there and the players turn to him, and in the first opportunity, they sack the manager. You need to have a bit of respect for the manager, and I think Aston Villa have got a bit of respect for Unai Emery now. They've got a manager that they believe they can build upon. And I believe Unai Emery is sitting there and thinking, do I want to step up from Aston Villa? Maybe, but I've had my chance at PSG. I've had my chance at Arsenal. Maybe this is my calling. Maybe it's right for me to be at Aston Villa and take an old, dormant beast back to the greats that they once were, back to the Champions League, etc. Maybe that's what Unai Emery is thinking. Maybe he's thinking, Aston Villa is a perfect team for me. Such heritage, rich heritage in English football. Let's take them back to the greats. Let's take Aston Villa back to where they belong, like their fan base have been yearning for. That's probably what he's thinking, and boy, is he on the right path to do so. Because even if they make Europa League, let's not forget, Unai Emery is the Europa League master. I know he didn't win it at Arsenal, my club, but this is his competition. Europa League is Unai Emery's bread and butter. He loves that competition, and it's like the back of his hand to him, man. He loves it. So if they do make Europa League, that'll be brilliant for Aston Villa. Let's see if they spend some money in January. In the summer, and take that next step up next season. But regardless, what a turnaround it's been for Aston Villa. Since Steven Gerrard's left, it's been only up for them. A lot of people are saying, ooh, they could be relegated. Might struggle, but boy, has he really turned around Unai Emery, and credit to him. He's done absolutely brilliantly, man. Brilliantly. Love to see it as well. Obviously, I know at Arsenal he struggled, but since then, done absolutely brilliant. So kudos to Unai Emery, and I wish Aston Villa all the best. Let's move on to Newcastle, back to them again. So Newcastle United, right? This game does not dictate how they're going to perform this season. Not one bit. It does not dictate what's been a brilliant season for Eddie Howe and this Newcastle United side. It's one of those games. Like I say, it happens to every team. You're going to get obliterated in one game this season. It happens. The thing for Newcastle now is you got to stop the bleeding. You can't let this game cause a rut or cause a lack of confidence. Because I always say, losing games happened. No team's going to be like the Arsenal 2003-2004 Invincibles team, where you don't lose a game. Losses are going to happen in the Premier League. It's how you respond for me. The top teams, they take a loss, then they take it out on the next opponent with aggression, with anger, with frustration. They beat down the next team. But no, other teams, the weak-minded teams, they lose a game and it affects them. They lose the next game or they draw the next game. Then suddenly it doesn't become 3 points lost. It becomes 5 or 6 points lost or 9 points lost. Newcastle can't let that happen. They stop the bleeding next week against Tottenham Hotspur. It's a massive game. Of course, it's a fight for top 4 game. It's going to be at St James's Park. Crowd are going to be on their side. I do back Newcastle to bounce back against Tottenham, especially given how bad Tottenham are in terms of their Jekyll and Hyde team. Sometimes they win, sometimes they lose. But Newcastle got to find a way to bounce back. That's the main thing for me. You can't let this lack of confidence fester around the side. You can't let this fester like a disease. You got to bounce back as soon as possible for Newcastle United. And next week against Tottenham, what a game to do so. Massive fixture, crowd on your side. Let's make sure that Newcastle bounce back. That's what I'd be saying to them. Okay, afternoon everyone. I appreciate you tuning to the stream. Mohammed, Watford going to lose today. I'm going to watch Brighton because we're linked with manager who learned from De Zerbi. That'll be alright. Well, Watford, I hope they don't lose obviously in the Championship. Brighton, I'm going to be watching that game as well. Brighton-Chelsea will be a massive game. De Zerbi is a top manager. Top manager, man. Brighton played beautiful football. Against Tottenham last week, I know Brighton lost that game, but it was due to referee decisions. Let's get that in for the first. But also, they dominated Tottenham. Between the boxes, they were elite, Brighton, elite. Between the boxes, they're a quality football team, man. From defence to attack, they play really good football. They got some real hitters in there. Caicedo, Alexis McAllister, good midfielders, man. Mitoma, we know he cooks. What a player he is. Evan Ferguson, he turns out to be one of the best young strikers around right now. Really good, man. So kudos to Brighton, man. I wish him the best against Chelsea later today, because I really have a lot of faith in that football team. I have a lot of respect for teams like Brighton, like Brentford, teams that don't necessarily splash a lot of cash, but they play a really good system, really good recruitment, stuff like that. I really rate those teams. So yeah, best of luck to Brighton later today. But going back to Newcastle, so they've got Tottenham next week, and I do believe Newcastle will make Champions League. I'm not going to change my prediction. My prediction always has been Arsenal, Man City, United, Newcastle to make Champions League. Not necessarily in that order, by the way, but I think those are the teams that will make Champions League. I don't see a reason to change now, but it is about how they bounce back. That's the main thing for Newcastle. That is the main thing. You can't lose this game. Because this is the first time when Newcastle have really been beaten bad this season, by the way. Like, they weren't in this game at all. Like, it was 3-0, but it could have been 4 or 5. Let's be completely honest about it. How do they bounce back? That's the thing for Newcastle. Do they then let this fester? Does it then spread like a disease? Do they get infected with this? Oh, we're not good enough. Oh, maybe we're not a Champions League team. We lost 3-0 to Aston Villa. Maybe we're not good enough to make Champions League this season. Does that like sprinkle and fester around the squad? And then suddenly they go to Tottenham Hotspur and suddenly they're a little bit raggedy. They're a little bit shaken. The crowd are a bit agitated. They're a bit frustrated. Oh, Harry Kane gets a goal on the counter-attack. Then what happens to Newcastle? So they got to make sure next game they come out fast. I'm sure Eddie Howe will be on a training ground telling his players, look, boys, it's one of those games. We lost today. Aston Villa are looking like a top side recently. A lot of teams would have lost this match, whether they're Newcastle, Arsenal, Man City, etc. We got Tottenham next week. We're going to have our fans on our side. Let's give them a performance they deserve. That's what I think he's going to be saying on the training ground. And I do back him to bounce back against Tottenham. I think they will win that game. Other clubs want this young manager, so apparently he's good. I wonder who the manager is. Let me know, Sajid, who the manager is. There's some top managers around world football. Zerbi is one. The Sporting Lisbon manager is a top manager, by the way. Let's get that in, by the way. The Sporting Lisbon manager is compared to the next Jose Mourinho out in Portugal. Really good manager, man. So he could be a potential option. I expect him to go to potentially to the Premier League. I can see a top club snapping him up. Would be really good project manager. I'd like to see Tottenham, for example, look at him potentially as one of their options. I think he'd be a really good manager for them. But yeah, back to Aston Villa. Anyone think Aston Villa are going to make the Champions League? Let me know in live chat. Do you think Aston Villa are making Champions League football? Because I think a lot of people might think, you know what, they're probably going to make Europa League now. And I genuinely think they can. I genuinely think they can make Europa League. Let's look at the contenders right now. Because the Europa League contenders, we've got Tottenham, we've got Brighton, we've got Liverpool, and we've got Aston Villa for me. Those are the 4 teams fighting for Europa League. And there's 2 spots Europa League and 1 spot Europa Conference League. Out of all those teams, Aston Villa have got the best form. They have. They've got the best form. Genuinely. Like, we know Liverpool on paper have got the better team. We know Tottenham on paper have got the better team. And arguably Brighton have the better team on paper. But form-wise, Aston Villa are cooking. And that's how, when you get to the run-in, sometimes it's the momentum that can save you. Genuinely. Like, if you get a couple of wins under your belt, or 3, 4, 5 that Aston Villa are doing, that can ride you through the wave. And you want to play football games every week. You don't want to have a break. You want to play week in, week out, now that you've got the form on your side. You've won today. Those Aston Villa players are not thinking, oh, I want to rest now. They're thinking, get me back on that football pitch. I want to play again. We've just won 3-0. I could have played till midnight. We were playing so well. That's what it's like. When you're losing games, that's when you feel like the world's caving in on you. You feel the pressure around you. You want to have a bit of a break. But when you're winning football matches, you want to be playing as much as possible. You want to be back on that football pitch as soon as you can and getting some more wins under your belt. And that's how the Aston Villa players will be feeling, because there's a lot of confident aura around that football club. And this win will do a lot. Will do a lot to help the team, because Newcastle United, whether or not they're a top side, I do believe they're a really good side in this Premier League. The numbers don't lie. They're 4th in the table or /3. And they've got the best defensive record in the Premier League. The numbers do not lie one bit. So the fact you're able to win this game, A, in convincing fashion, B, put 3 goals past them, and C, keep a clean sheet, will do the world of good to the Aston Villa fan base, the Aston Villa players, and Unai Emery, who I believe are on good form, and potentially good odds to make the Champions League if you go by momentum. Like, the way I look at it, yeah, you're only as good as your last game is the old cliche, right? If an alien comes down to planet Earth and you show them the last 3 weeks of the Premier League, who do you think is making Champions League, and you show them Brighton's games, Aston Villa's games, Liverpool's games and Tottenham's games, they're going to say Aston Villa will make it, because their form has been really good. Their performance has been good. Tough away win at Chelsea. Tough away win that game 2-0. Confident fashion. We saw Liverpool struggle at Chelsea in midweek. It's a tough place to go, Stamford Bridge, no matter how bad Chelsea play. They're getting results and they're looking really good. So for me, they've got every chance of making Champions League football this season, Aston Villa. They've got to keep looking good, got to keep cooking, and boy oh boy, they're going to put themselves in a great opportunity to make Champions League football next season. I wish them the absolute best. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. Do you think Aston Villa are going to make Champions League? And if not, who are your picks to make Champions League football next season and Europa League form as well? I'd love to hear it. 34 years old, Francesco Farioli. I've never heard of him, Sajid, unfortunately. I'll do some research on him later. 34 years old is young for a manager, though, very young. A lot of people are still playing at that age. But hey, if he's a good manager, why not take a risk on him? Why not take a risk on young managers, man? I'm all for it. I'm all for it in football. Football's definitely, there's a lot of creativity and ingenuity happening in football nowadays. So why not take a risk? Why not go for a young manager that's got fresh ideas? Why not go for a young manager that's going to implement his style? Especially if you're a club like Watford, a club like teams around there where you're not necessarily got the expectations like the Chelseas, the Arsenals, the Man Cities do of this world. Why not go for a young manager like that? I'm all for it, man. I'm all for a young manager implementing their style and bringing fresh ideas to football. All for it, man. I wish him the absolute best. But yeah, I'm going to run through my picks now on who I believe is going to, in the table, I guess. Starting from the top, who's going to win the Premier League? For me, I'm still going to go for Arsenal. I'm an Arsenal fan. Do I think Man City can win it? Absolutely. And do I think Man City are favourites? Potentially. It's all going to go to that crunch match on April the 26th, which I will, of course, be streaming on this channel. My reaction to Man City versus Arsenal on April the 26th. What a game that will be, by the way. Cannot wait for it, man. Come on, Arsenal. Do not let me down in that football match. But yeah, Arsenal, Man City 1 and 2. I think third place will be Manchester United. I still do believe they'll make it. I believe fourth place will be Newcastle. I believe fifth place will be Aston Villa. I believe sixth place will be Tottenham. I then believe it will be Liverpool, Brighton. Those are teams finishing first to eighth, in my opinion. Feel free to disagree and let me know yours in the live chat. I'd love to hear it. But that's my prediction of how I believe the Premier League table are going to go. Of course, it's bound to change, and it could. But I just do think Aston Villa's consistency and Aston Villa's performances right now are really good. Like, genuinely really good. Like, they're on form. No one wants to play Aston Villa. No team's thinking Aston Villa is an easy game. And sometimes that little bit of confidence, a little bit of aura, that little bit of edge to you can genuinely really help. Genuinely, that little bit of aura, that little bit of, we're Aston Villa, we're top team. Oh, I don't want to play there. I don't want to go to Villa Park. Oh, Villa Park 12:30 kickoff. Oh, Villa Park 4:30 p.m. I don't want to go there. That little bit of extra confidence and edge to you can really help. And Aston Villa have that. Aston Villa genuinely have that. Whereas the other teams, I don't think have that as much right now. Villa will get 6. Okay, good prediction. Brighton 5th. Wow. He's 34 years old, but 1 year to build momentum in the Championship. Yeah, I mean, give him a feeder period in the Championship. Give him a year to adapt, stuff like that. Villa 6 and Brighton 5th. That would be a turn in events, because then you're expecting one of the big boys to miss out on Europa League, which would be crazy. I'd love to see that be the case. For football, I'd love to see teams like Brighton, teams like Villa make Europa League. Teams like Newcastle as well make Champions League, Europa League. Because why not? Why not break up the Big Six? Because every year we're expecting, the Big Six, teams finishing top 6. The big 6 teams: Arsenal, Man City, Man United, Tottenham, Chelsea, Liverpool. There's your top 6. Other teams fight for the rest of the positions. I don't like that. I'm an Arsenal fan, but I don't like that. I want to see teams like Villa. I want to see teams like Brighton, Brentford, Newcastle think, you know what? We're not part of the big 6, but why not push for Champions League? Why not push for Europa Conference League? Why not? Who tells us we can't? It's a fair game. Every team plays each other twice. Why can't we? Why can't we put together some good form? Why can't we put together some good results, make Champions League, make Europa League? Why not? And I love having that mentality around these football clubs. So I have a lot of faith in teams like that pushing for it. And you know what? If they make it, kudos to them, man. Kudos to them. I've seen some really good football from these sides as well. It's not like Brighton have fluked their way to this position. It's not like Aston Villa fluked their way to this position. Likewise, Newcastle. In periods, they've been resolute. In periods, they've been pragmatic and defensively assured and hitting on the counter-attack. And I'd expect them to do so. They're not exactly going to go toe-to-toe with teams like Man City, are they? But equally, I've seen games where I've seen Brighton play really good football, genuinely top tier football. So they've got all the merit to make these Champions League spots or Europa League spots, and I wish them all the best, man. Genuinely wish them all the best. They've played really well this season, those sides, and genuinely I think they deserve it. Really good performances from them, and kudos to them. I wish them all the best, those teams, and I'd love to see teams like Aston Villa, teams like Brighton make Europa League or Champions League. It'd be brilliant. Be brilliant for the Premier League as well. Show how competitive it is. So big luck to them. Good luck on all accounts. I wish them the absolute best. Anyone else, let me know your live chat predictions as well regarding the Premier League table. My next stream, of course, will be later today. 7:30 p.m. the stream starts. It'll be a reaction review to Man City versus Leicester. What a game, by the way. We're looking at Leicester, who have struggled a lot recently. They lost last week to Bournemouth. But is this the type of bounce back game? Is this a game where you've hit rock bottom, you can bounce back against the champions, against a team that many are saying now are favourites to win the Premier League? Can Leicester do that? On the other side, you've got Man City, who right now are in the best form of their life. They're looking really good. As an Arsenal fan, I'm worried. They seem to click. They've got the 4 centre-backs in their team. Stones slotting into midfield. De Bruyne as well getting in their team. Gundogan as well cooking in there. Man City look like they don't have any sort of frailties. Are they going to keep the momentum going against 19th in the table, Leicester City? Let's see, man. It'll be an interesting game. I cannot wait for it. Make sure you subscribe, turn bell notification for that game. The thing I'm looking for with that match, right? I think everyone's expecting Man City to win that game. Let me know in the live chat if you disagree, but I think everyone's is expecting Man City to beat Leicester City later today, and I'm expecting that as well. What I'm looking for as an Arsenal fan, I just want to see some kind of frailty with Man City. Because in recent weeks, ever since basically they drew to Leipzig in the Champions League and drew to Forest in the Premier League, ever since then, Man City have showed zero frailties. Not one bit. Not one time have I watched Man City in any of the matches since. I've watched every Man City game. Basically, since Arsenal, Man City have been in the title race, I've watched every Man City game. I've looked at them, I've gone, every game I think they've deserved that victory. They've looked really good. On the flip hand, on the other side, you've got Arsenal, Arsenal won a lot of matches. But against Bournemouth, brilliant win, by the way. And champions mentality to win that football match from 2-0 down. But it's frailties. You're 2-0 down to Bournemouth. I've not seen Man City have frailties since the Forest 1-1 draw, where they conceded basically last minute to Chris Wood. And that's a bad sign. So in today's match, although I'd love Leicester to get a result as an Arsenal fan, I'd absolutely love it. I'm not expecting that. I just want to see Man City have some kind of frailties to give me the confidence that one team can beat them. Because if they play like they play against Bayern Munich, if they play like they play against Liverpool, no team on planet Earth will beat Man City. No team on planet Earth will get a point against Man City. Because they look good. They look very good recently. So I'm just looking for some kind of frailty for Man City. Some kind of sign that makes me think they can drop off. They've got a weakness here. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm praying for. I cannot wait for it. Subscribe if you're new around here because that will be my next reaction. Man City versus Leicester City later today. 7:30 p.m. stream will be absolutely brilliant. Cannot wait for it. Come on, Leicester City. Get me something to cheer about as an Arsenal fan. And of course, tomorrow, West Ham versus Arsenal stream at 4 p.m. Forest versus Manchester United stream at 6:30 p.m. Of course, I will be there for match reviews straight after the matches. I cannot wait. The Premier League is back. I did the Champions League games in midweek and it was fun to review, but the Premier League is my bread and butter. I love this league, man. Absolutely brilliant. I cannot wait for it. But yeah, in today's match, Villa winning 3-0. Thoroughly deserved it. Took Newcastle United to the cleaners. Played really good football, really exciting football as well. A game that, let's be honest, they dominated from start to finish. Probably deserved more goals. Newcastle United got to dust themselves off now. It's a loss and it is a bad loss. But one thing they do have to say is they haven't been obliterated like that this season. It's one of those games. They get back to the training grounds and they dust themselves off and they go again against Tottenham next week. Because you can't let results like this impact you negatively. Because despite this, Newcastle have had a brilliant season. Bruno Guimaraes has been amazing. Isak has been amazing. Trippier, Botman, Shaw, really good overall Newcastle. Pope in goals been really good as well. They don't ship a lot of goals. They conceded 3 today. It's one of those games. It's a blip. We got to put it down as just one. It's an anomaly. That's what you got to say as a Newcastle United player, fan, and coach. And you go next week against Tottenham with the fans on your side, in your building, with knowing that there's top 4 implications, and you win that football match. That's what I would say. But overall, you got to say, Aston Villa deserved it. Aston Villa deserved it. You got to turn it around. But as always, make sure you subscribe if you're new around here. My next stream, as I said, 7:30 p.m. today, straight after Man City versus Leicester City. Cannot wait for that football match. Cannot wait for it one bit. If you're new around here, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you drop a like down below. If you just tuned into the stream now, scroll back, maybe watch it from the start. It was a really good stream overall for the past half an hour. I'm going to now go and watch the 3 p.m. games. And I cannot wait for my game. I'll probably watch Chelsea-Brighton. But yeah, I appreciate everyone tuning in. I hope to see you all in my next stream. I've been White Football.